Well, you ask about the impact of the ambitions of China now, which has arrived in Africa as purchaser, as investor, as salesperson, and so on. Generally, I'm very pleased with this new feature for Africa because that gives them more options, that disrupts this dependence on their traditional, very often sort of colonial masters. And in many ways, it also has helped to raise the price for natural resources, therefore makes it possible for Africa to grow at a rate which is necessary for Africa to escape poverty and misery and fighting and death and destruction. You know. On the other hand, of course, the Chinese come in there without any strings attached, without any conditionality, all these requirements of donor agencies, but also investors at a minimum of good governance, rule of law and so on should be there before they put all their money into a country. The Chinese don't really do that, and this is for some African leaders is a great luxury, you know. So you have suddenly $5 billion offered to you at a very low interest rate, or even for free, in return for mining rights in the Democratic Republic of Congo for infrastructure, or in other countries. Now the question is really whether the leadership in Africa has learned their lessons, you know, whether they have learned how destructive and damaging bad governance was for them. And I would say many countries in Africa have now a leadership and a population which doesn't tolerate the same degree of corruption anymore, which we, the OECD countries, the Western rich countries, introduced in many of these countries. I mean, we should not forget that until 1999, systematic corruption was allowed in our countries. I mean, in Germany, you could deduct bribes which you paid to President Moi or to President Mobutu. You could deduct this from your taxable income. Our export insurance companies, they didn't give a damn about the circumstances under which these large investments and contracts have been entered into. And I think even nowadays there are still quite a number of people who congratulate the companies from Germany, from the UK, from France, who managed to get these investments, get these contracts in Africa, which very often were highly corrupt and distorted economic policy, decision-making, perverted economic policies in these countries, and is the main cause, in my opinion, of the poverty and misery in many of these countries. Now, that's our history. When you go to China and say your people are bribing the Africans, they will say, you know, we never allowed our exporters or our investors to bribe outside the Chinese borders. It is very hard for us to criticize the particular risk of corruption which comes with Chinese investment. But some of their methods, of course, are extremely dubious. I mean, for instance, if you go in and have these barter arrangements, you know, you say you allow me to mine all your copper and I give you $5 billion worth of roads, you know, or railways or ports or anything. This is a recipe for disaster, because each one of those two projects is a very complex negotiation. It has to be very properly prepared. You know? I mean, how do you set up the enabling environment for mining which really helps the people, you know, which covers environmental issues, which covers human resources issues, secondary linkages in the economy, the local populations, land use, and so on. Plus, of course, the sharing of the benefits in terms of taxes and dividends and royalties and so on. This is extremely complex and very often takes years to negotiate. On the other hand, how do you locate roads? You know, where do you build a railway? You know, in Guinea right now, the question is, do you build a railway from Conakry all the way to Mali, or do you use a railway which goes through Liberia, to the south? That makes a tremendous difference for the people in the country, but also for the profitability of the mine. So in many ways, infrastructure siting and proper development and maintenance and designing, I can tell you this from my period in the World Bank, is a great, great art, which is very difficult. It can easily destroy the economy of a country if you do it wrongly. And so if you throw these two things together and say the Chinese will do everything, this cannot work. And therefore there are quite a number of activities which one has to watch very carefully. But I think the people who have to watch it are the leaders, the ministers of Africa. And I talked to the Minister of Mines of Ghana at one point, and he said, we have learned our lesson, we have seen corrupt deals in the past, with our European friends. I can tell you, we now are very careful and compare the offers we have from China, from Russia, from Brazil, from Germany, from Canada, from Japan, and we take what is the best for us. And we don't need conditionality. We will use our own common sense, because we know that what we owe our people. We owe our people that we sell our natural resources in a way which is sustainable, which is helpful, and leads to real development in the country.